Nikki Haley, who wants to be president of the United States, she's doing pretty well right now in the polls. I mean, in that lower tier, you got Donald Trump, who clearly is going to get the nomination unless something unbelievable happens. And then you've got the rest of them. And so far, amongst the rest of them, Nikki Haley seems to be doing pretty well. Last poll out of New Hampshire showed her actually in a solid second place, overcoming Chris Christie and Ron DeSantis. So a lot of those Republicans who don't like Donald Trump seem to love themselves some Nikki Haley. So here was Nikki Haley yesterday making a humble proposal about her biggest concern on social media.
When I get into office, the first thing we have to do, social media accounts, social media companies, they have to show America their algorithms. Let us see why they're pushing what they're pushing. The second thing is every person on social media should be verified by their name. That's, first of all, it's a national security threat. When you do that, all of a sudden people have to stand by what they say, and it gets rid of the Russian bots, the Iranian bots, and the Chinese bots. And then you're going to get some civility when people know their name is next to what they say.
Accountability.
And they know their pastor and their family member is going to see it. It's going to help our kids, and it's going to help our country.
All right, hold on a second now. There's a lot to unpack here. First of all, do you love the fact that anytime somebody says anything on social media, that people like Nikki Haley or others in the aloft, self-appointed elite class of politicians or media figures or entertainment realm or what have you, whenever anybody out there says something that's remotely negative or even offensive or critical of them or their position, they immediately jump on this Russian bot thing. Oh, it's a Russian bot, Russian bot, Russian bot. You know, the first time we started hearing about Russian bots, it was when Hillary Clinton and her whole team energized the Justice Department and the FBI to investigate the Trump campaign and eventually the Trump administration about Russian collusion. That was a hoax. The whole idea of Russian bots is completely overblown. And it's always under the guise of national security threats. You know, be wary of somebody who wants power and then wants to use that power to infringe on your rights under the precepts of national security. It would be great if Nikki Haley and all the people who are cheering this on could point to one instance where our national security was damaged because of a so-called Russian bot or somebody anonymous posting on social media. They can't do it. It hasn't happened. But there's more to unpack here. Listen to what she says at the beginning.
When I get into office, the first thing we have to do...
The first thing you have to do? I'm sorry. The first thing you have to do? She's working her butt off for almost a year now to be president of the United States. She's raising money. She's spending money. She's shaking hands. She's going to diners. She's kissing babies. She's doing the ads. She's doing the media appearances. She's doing the debates. Also, she can get into the White House so that she can achieve her first thing, to out anonymous accounts on social media. That's the number one priority. Not fix the economy, not build the wall, not protect our border, not restore national security and a sense of pride in this country, not clean up the crime on our streets, not clean out the mess and swamp that is Washington, D.C., not send an investigation into the Justice Department and the FBI about how they're targeting innocent American citizens. The first thing she's going to do is out anonymous. What cat turd on Twitter is the big problem in this country. Cat turd is a national security threat. She continued this jihad against anonymous accounts on this Washington, D.C. podcast. Oh, Kevin, jump on in here with your microphone. What's the name of this podcast? It's I've lost it for a quick second. It's the one with Comfortably Smug. Oh, God, I feel terrible. I love these guys. It's, oh, man. All right, Kevin will tell me in a minute. He'll remind me. Kevin McMahon is the person who puts all our topics together here, makes everything happen. He's the genius of video at Town Hall. I'm giving him compliments to fill time right now while he finds this for me. And
you're looking for Ruthless.
Ruthless, the Ruthless podcast. All right, remove yourself now. That was an outrageous, gratuitous attempt to steal the focus from me. That's Kevin. The Ruthless Podcast. Thank you. I know all of you were just screaming it at your device as you're watching us. Here's Nikki Haley, and I want you to bear in mind that one of the lead hosts of the Ruthless Podcast is a guy who is legendarily anonymous on social media. He goes by the name Comfortably Smug. So this is a little awkward.
They need to verify every single person on their outlet and I want it by name. Because when
what about Smug? Does he qualify?
I've provided them with my government.
If Smug is on your driver's license, then and look, you can put Smug in parentheses, but I want everybody's name.
I want everybody's name. Boy, that sounds kind of authoritarian, doesn't it? One of the big reasons why we're having this Republican primary, so we can get a nominee that will push back against what we're seeing right now in Washington, D.C., is to sort of get away from the authoritarian bent that we're seeing. One other aspect of this that I want to point out, because she led here on this Fox News appearance by saying this is a national security threat, national security. But then listen to the end here.
In the Chinese spots. And then you're going to get some civility when people know their name is next to what they say.
Accountability.
And they know their pastor and their family member is going to see it. It's going to help our kids and it's going to help our country.
Oh, there you go. You see, national security, sure, but what it's really about is civility. She's upset that people are uncivil. And the way to get people to be civil is to ban anonymous accounts. Now, I want to say, and in a minute, I'm going to give you my thoughts on this, because that's not without merit. There's something to it, and it's worth exploring. But let's get back to Nikki Haley in particular, because this created a firestorm late yesterday afternoon. Byron York of the Washington Examiner reached out to the Haley campaign to get more information. And here's their statement. It's very important to read it. We all know that America's enemies use anonymous bots to spread anti-American lies and sow chaos and division within our borders. By the way, you know how we all know that? Because we do the same thing. We do the same thing. I assure you, there's a little wing over there at Langley who creates anonymous accounts in foreign nations we wouldn't call them lies or chaos and division. We're actually just sort of trying to inform the public in other countries. So this is typical espionage efforts, information wars. Yes, that's true. Of course we know that. I go back to my original challenge. Show me one instance where America has been harmed, our national security has been harmed by some anonymous Twitter account, a bot, or what have you. The campaign goes on to say, Nikki believes social media companies need to do a better job of verifying users so we can crack down on Chinese, Iranian, and Russian bots. That's common sense. Well, that may be common sense, but that's not what Nikki Haley said. Nikki Haley said that if she were president, she would make those companies do it. She's not sitting up there recommending that they crack down on anonymous accounts. She's saying, oh, I'll force them to do it. It has to happen. And nowhere in that statement had it anything to do with people who aren't Russian bots. See, that's the problem. You want to get rid of the Russian anonymous accounts to protect our national security. I'm all for it. But what about the people who aren't Russian accounts or foreign entities trying to harm our national security? They're just people who are trying not to get canceled. See, the fact of the matter is, Comfortably Smug and Cat Turd and Libs of TikTok before she was outed against her will. And if I may be honest, yours truly, me, Larry O'Connor. We're anonymous. We were anonymous. I mean, when I started, I was anonymous. I went by the name Stage Right back in 2009 and the first parts of 2010 when I was writing on the internet, when I began podcasting and live streaming a radio show on the internet, and when I was tweeting and using Facebook on social media. I had a second account under the name Stage Right because I was working in the theater business and I was a conservative. Get it? Stage Right. And I didn't want to threaten my employment. I didn't want to put my employer in a compromising position for that matter. The fact of the matter is there are a lot of conservatives, almost the entirety of conservatives who are anonymous and lending their opinion and their voice to the national conversation right now, who remain anonymous because they will get canceled. And by the way, this was when I was anonymous. It was way before Trump. Everyone says, well, Trump changed everything. No. Back then, you could get canceled in my industry if you admitted you were a Republican at all and voting for John McCain, let alone Mitt Romney. Don't kid yourself to think that this is some new creation under President Trump. And for a Republican nominee not to recognize that conservatives in particular, like libs of TikTok, face an existential threat to their employment and their future and even to their safety if their anonymity is revealed, because it is open season on conservatives in this country right now. It's open season on conservative thought in this country. If Nikki Haley wants to be president and she doesn't get that and she doesn't understand that, well, she is so removed from the reality of what it's like to be a conservative Republican in America today that she's disqualified herself from consideration. It's incredibly disconcerting, frankly. Also, her rival, Ron DeSantis, makes a great point in rebutting this. You know who were anonymous writers back in the day? Alexandria Hamilton, John Jay, James Madison, when they wrote the Federalist Papers. Yeah. Ever heard of Common Sense, the pamphlet that actually created the American Revolution and inspired George Washington? Yeah. Thomas Paine was anonymous. That wasn't his real name. Silence Dogood was the anonymous name that Ben Franklin used when he wrote. How are they any different than modern day conservatives who write freely under a pseudonym? The only difference is right now they use an electronic vehicle to deliver their message. The great one, Mark Levin, who knows a little bit about the founding of this country, also chimed in against Nikki Haley. You would think with all the evidence, court decisions, congressional hearings demonstrating the federal government's abuses of free speech, censorship, monitoring, and all the rest, a Republican running for president would have concern about further empowering the federal government with lists of the names of individuals posting on social media. Yeah, amen to that. You would think. Haven't we seen enough government abuse as it is right now with how they interact with and handle Twitter accounts? I mean, we just learned last week that people like Molly Hemingway and Donald Trump and Dan Bongino and many others were actually put on a list at the FBI, handed to Twitter and said, stop these people from talking. And now Nikki Haley wants to jump on board and force anonymous accounts to out themselves as well. That said, I promised you that I would give you a little bit more nuance on this discussion, because if you take aside Nikki Haley wanting to assert executive power to force this, obviously undermining the First Amendment and the freedom of speech, the idea that anonymous accounts and anonymous personalities being able to say whatever they want online without any actual social repercussion, the idea that that is damaging to our universal culture and our common discourse, that's actually not too controversial. It seems pretty reasonable, actually. None other than Jordan Peterson agrees with this. He engaged in an ongoing back and forth about anonymous accounts online many months ago. And he said most anonymous accounts are counterproductive. I never said they should be banned. I merely said that the anonymous accounts should be separated from the real people. And I think that that's closer to reality. You know, back when I was stage right, and then I became Larry O'Connor because I shifted my career and started working for Andrew Breitbart and the Breitbart sites. That's where I was writing back in 2009 and 2010 when I started this career. We reached a point there, I think it was around 2011, where the comment section at Breitbart became completely unmanageable. There were just tons of comments that violated our standards, that violated our terms. And it became a story unto itself. Back then, there would be articles written on left-wing websites, Huffington Post and such, saying, look at all of the fever swamp of racism and anarchy over at Breitbart. These are the people who read Breitbart. These people, this tells you everything you need to know about Breitbart. And Andrew would be so frustrated by it because we editors, I was an editor of Breitbart TV. I was in charge of moderating all the comments, and it became more than a full-time job. It was insane. It was impossible to stay on top of. And Andrew was like, my God, Andrew Breitbart said, I cannot believe that these are the people who are reading our sites. And I said, I don't think they are. I think that it was left-wing trolls. We know that this is a thing. We know that this happens. Left-wing trolls would go to the Breitbart site. They would create a fake account, and then they would say the most horrendous things about Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, and it's all racist and all this stuff. And then it would make it look like these are the readers of our sites. And at the time, Andrew wanted a solution. And I said, I've got a solution for you. No more fake accounts. No more fake accounts. Anybody who wants to comment on the Breitbart sites, they need to create an account, and they need to present a credit card. It's a $1 fee every year. It'll cost them $1. This was my idea. They verify their identity, and the $1 goes to, Wounded Warriors or some other charity entity that helps our troops. But this way, people, we know exactly who is saying what on our sites. And as soon as you take the anonymity away, as soon as your face and your name is associated with the horrendous thing you're about to say, maybe it'll give you pause before you say it. So Nikki Haley does have a point. Jordan Peterson has a point. They're not necessarily wrong. The problem is, first of all, Nikki Haley's lying about her intentions because she's raising the national security specter, and that's BS. Secondly, you don't fix a problem by punishing everybody. You go after the people who are the problem. And thirdly, and most importantly, you certainly don't have the government mandate it and force the issue because, well, we have freedoms here. It's called the First Amendment, and we should embrace it while we can.